Hi, Ender Cuneo here with another new standard deck tech using a bunch of Crimson Vow cards. So this is a green-white humans deck. I tried a deck like this when Midnight Hunt came out based around Catilda. It wasn't quite good enough. It suffered from not having very good one-drops, and just all around it wasn't as good as just a straight white deck. So I'm trying this out again. There's a bunch of new additions from Crimson Vow that gives me some hope that this is going to wind up to be a good deck. So I'm going to go over what those are and then get into some games. For starters, there's two new one-drops. This is perhaps the most important one, the Allenbach Escort. 1/1 Vigilance for a white, but the most important part is you can sack it, and target creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it gains life like an indestructible. That ability is going to become important when we look at one of the other new additions. There's also this one, Hopeful Initiate, 1/2 training for a white, and you can spend a white and 2 to remove 2 counters to get rid of an artifact or enchantment. There aren't that many important enchantments in Standard right now, but there are some important artifacts. You could blow up an Asika's Chariot, maybe. There's, Portable Hole. So this is kind of a curve filler. I wouldn't say that the activated ability on this card is that important, but it is a little bit of extra value. Then I also have 2 Lunarch Veterans in my deck, which I don't know if they're good or not. They're kind of curve filler. It's pretty important for this deck to have all humans, and you do want to put a creature into play on the first and second turn if you can. So that's what they're there for. You might be able to find something better. I tried Archpriest of Iona for a while, and it was really lackluster. It was just too hard to get the party types to line up correctly. Moving on to the 2-drops, there's Catilda, which is one of the big payoffs for adding green to your white creature deck. The protection from werewolves, not a big deal, but having all of your humans tap to add a mana of any of that creature's colors is a really, really important ability. It's going to lead to some very explosive draws. That's one of the reasons that I really want to make sure I have 1-drops is they allow you to, dump your whole hand out if you draw Catilda. Then the second ability, 4 green and a white, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. It gives you some late game inevitability. It's not something you're going to use every game, but it is a very strong ability. Here's another new, very big addition, Thalia. It's a reprint, but it gives you a way to slow down the red-blue spells decks and basically just annoy them. It's not going to completely stop them. It's not the most durable creature in the world, but it is an extremely good card. Got Luminarch Aspirant, which is just probably the best white card in Standard. And importantly, the Aspirant, you can put counters on cards, and then you can use the Allenbach Escort to protect them. So this does give you a way to make it so your Thalia is going to just stay in play, potentially, which could be an important thing against a red-blue deck. And we've got Intrepid Adversary, really, really strong card in the white creature deck, obviously. It's kind of better in this deck than it would be in, say, straight white, because you can get it really, really large if you have a Catilda in play the turn you play it. Then we've got some of the usual white suspects in the 3-drop slot, Brutal Cathar, Elite Spellbinder, Adeline. Those are all very good. Anytime you're building a white deck in this Standard, you have so many options at the 3-drop slot that it's kind of hard to go wrong, but I don't know that I've necessarily gone right here. I have skimped on all of these to make room for 4 copies of a new card, the Hamlet Vanguard. So 3 mana, you get Ward 2, which is pretty nice. And then it comes into play with 2 +1/+1 counters on it for each other non-token human you control. So this is the other reason I really want to have a lot of humans low on my curve. Having this thing be a 3 mana 5/5 with Ward 2 on turn 3 is pretty realistic in this deck. If you're going to play creatures turn 1 and turn 2 a lot of the time. So if your opponent doesn't kill those, they're going to have a 5/5 with Ward 2 to deal with. And the Ward 2 that early in the game on a huge body is a really big deal. Also, because this card gets big with counters, you can protect it with the Allenbach Escort. You can give it lifelink with the Escort if you are in a situation where you need, to race. It can be a really big life total swing. So that's another, it's a powerful card. Like I said, when you're building a white deck, you have so many options at 3 mana. So this is competing with other extremely good cards. It remains to be seen whether it's really worth not just putting more copies of Adeline in your deck, but we'll see. And then this is another reason to have all of my other creatures be humans. This is the human lord, and it allows you to find human creatures. This is a really, really strong card on rate that just requires a very specific home, being this deck. Then we've got kind of the usual suspects in the land slot, all the dual lands, a mix of the creature lands, and 2 spell lands and Kabira takedowns. So not a ton of interaction in this deck. This is mostly an aggressive creature deck where you're just relying on your creatures being bigger than your opponents. But there are 2 takedowns and some brutal Cathars. Moving on to the sideboard, we're going to have a lot more interaction, which we can board in when it's well tailored for whatever the matchup is. So kind of a mix of creature removal, 3 portable holes, 1 circle of confinement, which is a new card, 1 in a white. You exile a 3 mana value or less creature from the battlefield. If you exile a vampire, you get 2 life. Vampires is one of the tribes that seemed somewhat impressive, so gaining 2 life, that can come up for sure. Then 2 copies of a reprint Valorous Stance. I mostly like this as a way to get rid of like Smoldering Egg. Also, it's going to be good against a mono green deck. Circle of Confinement's pretty good against mono green too. It gives you a clean answer to Old Growth Troll. Then also the 4th copy of Brutal Cathar and 1 copy of Skyclave Apparition and 2 more Elite Spellbinders and 2 more Redains. So you can kind of tailor your 3-drop slot to whatever you think you're going to need in the matchup. A 4th Thalia. I think it's probably that important against blue-red to have Thalia early, so 4 copies there. It's going to die a lot against the blue-red deck, and they're going to want to keep it off the board, so this gives you a way to replace it if it dies. Then finally, this is a new card which Marina's not letting me show you. This one I've not seen anybody else talking about, and to be honest, I'm not sure if it really has a home in Standard, but it is extremely powerful. So 4 mana enchantment. Whenever a human you control dies, you draw a card. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, you gain 2 life. And this deck is almost entirely humans. It's lots and lots of counters. So you can get both of the triggers a lot of the time. And, you know, if you're in a matchup against, say, a black deck where their plan is to kill all your creatures and you get this thing into play, their plan just isn't going to work anymore. So I'm excited that this is a powerful card. The question is it good in enough actual matchups you play? So I'm going to have to play some matches to find out about that. That's the deck. I'm going to get into some gameplay. Hope you guys find it interesting. On the play, I only have 1 land. Pretty clear mulligan. I like this hand a lot better. The question is, what am I going to put on the bottom? I think it's just going to be Kabira takedown. Obviously could have put it into play tapped on turn 1, no cost. I'd rather just have Kabira takedown still in my deck. Not that I'm very likely to make it all the way through my deck and find it again, but maybe if Coven triggers a whole bunch, that could happen. So I'm up against blue-green. I've not seen many blue-green decks. I don't really know what this deck is going to have going on. Could be something new and exciting, though. Interestingly, they still have Snarl in their deck. So this is a blue-green spells-based deck. I've thought about trying a deck like this. I haven't gotten to it yet. But I think it could be good. So they could have Snakeskin Veil. We should make this a 4/4. I'm just going to put the counter here. This way they don't have any good blocks unless they play a spell. And even if they play a spell, they're just going to be trading the Dragon Guard Elite. They could also have charge through, which would be a way to make this a 3/3 with no card disadvantage. Seems like they must have something. But they're choosing not to use it. They might need this card to be alive in case their hand is just a bunch of fight spells. I'm playing this one first just in case they have Jwari Disruption. Seems unlikely they could live by Jwari Disruptioning this, but there's not really any harm in it. Cost me 1 life. I want to put this into play just because it's going to allow me to trigger Coven. I don't know that it really matters. I don't want to put it on Sigarda just in case they have Fading Hope. I think that would be one of the... Probably, if they have a way to come back, it starts with them playing Fading Hope on Sigarda, and then I may be playing Inscription of Abundance or something like that. Alright, there's the Fading Hope on Sigarda. Now if they have Inscription of Abundance and they put counters, their creature actually would be big enough to just eat one of my guys. Yeah. All right. The game is going to continue. So this ability is 6 mana, double the number of counters on this. That's probably not going to be relevant anytime soon. Do I want to try to attack this turn? If I play Sigarda, all 3 of my creatures are lethal. So they would need like 2 bounce spells, or really just 1 copy of Inscription of Abundance would go a long way to ruining my board. I'm going to start with Sigarda and see if they get priority. They did. So if they have Inscription of Abundance, this thing's going to be a 9/9. I think I should still attack. So it would be a 9/9. They would kill something. Like maybe they would kill this, block this. Maybe the other way around even. If they have actual Inscription of Abundance, it's pretty bad for me. That is not nearly as bad because they didn't gain any life. I don't know about Thirst for Discovery in this deck. I would have tried Inspired Idea. Oh, they did discard a Jwari Disruption. Wonder if they had that earlier. Alright, so against this deck, Thalia seems incredible. Circle of Confinement seems great, as do Portable Holes. The question is, I guess also Brutal Cathar seems great. Skyclave Apparition seems great. I have so many great cards. What do I have that's not that great? Even honestly, Valorous Stance seems great too. I think maybe I should take the Hamlet Vanguards out of my deck just because I boarded in so many non-creatures and non-humans. Need to take out 7 cards. I'm going to take these out. Probably the Hopeful Initiate is pretty useless in this matchup. I guess I'll leave the Lunarch Veteran in just for curve reasons. But it's possible Valorous Stance is just going to be better. Yeah, let's just have Valorous Stance. Let's have max anti-creature cards. It's awkward that I have 4 Thalias in my deck and I have almost every non-creature card. But I still think Thalia is going to be good. What other creatures the opponent has in their deck. So, a bunch of different options here. I know they have Jwari Disruption in their deck, so I'm not going to play a 4-mana card. I could play Adeline and attack. I could play Elite Spellbinder. Elite Spellbinder is probably better if they have Fading Hope in their hand. Also, I want to potentially know if my opponent has Snakeskin Veil in their deck. They have Syncopate. Okay. Guess that was fine. And they did have a Jwari Disruption. So now, let's lead with an Adeline and see what they do. If they syncopate this again, I'll be able to Portable Hole the Dragon's Guard Elite. They didn't do anything. I think I'll just attack since I'm getting the token. Might not be able to ignore this for another turn. They tap their green mana. Well, the auto tapper tapped it for them. That pretty strongly indicates they don't have Snakeskin Veil in their hand, or they didn't. They also discarded Tempted by the Auric. I like this card a lot. It's a spicy one. Probably just Adeline plus Portable Hole looks pretty good. Lead on Sigarda and see what happens. Sigarda makes the 1/1s much more threatening for the opponent. I like the idea of the opponent's deck a lot, but I think the reality is that there aren't enough creatures like this, and the ones that do exist are a little bit too fragile. On the die roll again. Excellent. This is a very sad Kibira takedown. It would be a lot better if it was a Plains. This is a green-red land. This thing is going to be nice next turn. If my Catilda stays alive. Maybe it's better to just play Thalia and go after the Goldspan Dragon. Or I could take another hit and have the Hamlet Vanguard in play already. Be better able to race. I think I'm going to go with the Thalia Brutal Cathar line instead. Who wants to be better? Probably Thalia. If I'd drawn one more land this game, my hand would have been so much better because I would have been able to just dump everything into play and start attacking rather than having to use all of my plays just to tap them for mana. Depending on how good their hand is, I could definitely still win. Like they're gonna need this flyers to win this game, I think. So they need to either get their Goldspan Dragon back or play a new one. But that's going to make it really hard to win. Guess I'm just attacking with everything and hoping to race. Doesn't seem like a race I'm going to win. But maybe something will happen that surprises me. do potentially have the life gain from sacking this guy at some point. That, I think, is probably going to end the game. Both don't have much of a clock anymore, and I also can't really race through all the life gain that they've got from the Prosperous Innkeeper. I wonder if I left myself that on board. I didn't really think about it. Probably not. Hopefully they don't just have a second chariot. I'm not sure I could have beat a second chariot anyway, but certainly wouldn't be one of my preferred cards for them to have. So I am dead. All right, then. So they have Magdas, and they have 4 toughness things. And they have removal spells. Now their stance looks pretty good. I think these look pretty good. Portable Hole looks pretty good. Probably not Circle of Confinement. They didn't really play any 3-drops I specifically wanted to target. This didn't seem like a great spot for Thalia. They had spells, but they also had a lot of creatures. Definitely no on the Spellbinder. I'd like to find a way to try Laid to Rest in this matchup, but I don't think that's gonna... It's gonna be really hard to fit without making my curve too high. Let's try something like this. Not enough lands yet again. Plenty of lands. So if I draw my 3rd land next turn, I'm going to be able to go Catilda plus another 2-drop, and then I think I'll be in pretty good shape. If I don't draw another land, I guess I'm just going to play another Luminarch Aspirant. Well, tapped land is the same thing as not drawing a land for these purposes. I think I'm going to try to just get one of these big. They did play Infernal Grasp. They're also a red deck, so they might have red spells. Also, just having one of them big means that I'm dealing damage faster, and I'll be more likely to attack into whatever they play this turn. Turns out whatever they play this turn is a Goldspan Dragon. I'm not a fan of them having a Goldspan Dragon. Do they have Infernal Grasp too? Yuck. Am I getting Shatter Skull Smashing again? That would probably spell the end of the game. So I could play Sigarda and just try to trade it with the Goldspan Dragon. I don't think that's that likely of a winning line. I'm going to play the Brutal Cathar and just hope that they've used all the removal spells they have for the time being. This way I can play my Sigarda and maybe start making headway to actually winning as opposed to just trying to stabilize. Storm Predator. Okay. If the Brutal Cathar doesn't die this turn, never mind. This was yet another somewhat awkward draw on my part, and they had an extremely good draw. That's what it was. A turn 3 Goldspan. I guess we're going for Sigarda. I can't even actually attack because I would just be dead on the crackback. I'm just dead. All right. That was a slaughter. Yeah. This does not appear to be this deck's day. Green-blue land. Well, I'll play another few turns just to see what their deck is for the purposes of sideboarding. They're a Bant deck? They're probably just a green-white deck that's splashing for a few counters. I've done it. I've drawn a second land. I am off to the races. Oh, cool. Like a dedicated tribal deck. Alright, I think I've seen enough of what they've got going on. Let's sideboard and try to play a game where I get to keep at least 6 cards at the start. All of the exiling creatures are going to be great in this matchup. I think Portable Hole is going to be really good. Circle of Confinement is going to be good. Probably not Valorous Stance. Like, unless they have that Bears of Littjara card. Doesn't seem like it's going to do much. I don't think this is a particularly good matchup for Thalia or Elite Spellbinder. Just trim a Lunarch Veteran as well. I did board in 3/1 mana cards, so I'm not really making my curve higher. Wow, if they play one of the Shapeshifter cards and I Circle of Confinement it'll be a vampire and I'll gain 2 life. That'll be great. Come on. Draw where I don't mulligan. Only 1 color of mana, but at least 2 lands. And a 1 and a 2-drop. So this thing will be a 5/5 next turn, which is the thing that I wanted my deck to be doing, so that's pretty nice. I don't think there's any reason to keep this thing in play at this point. I could potentially draw another Hamlet Vanguard or the Sigarda, but this thing could also potentially get better, and as long as it's in play, the Allenbach Escort can attack. I need to reread this card. So they get a 2/2, becomes a 4/4, and then the 4/4s fight. Okay. I have bad news for you, opponent. This card is really good in this matchup, which is kind of why I've decided to keep this hand. Hopefully I draw a 2-drop. Even if I don't, this will probably be fine. I could 2-for-1 myself to get this off the board. What does this thing do? I don't think I need to do that yet. Is this when it casts or enters the battlefield? Enters the battlefield, so I may not want to Brutal Cathar the Tajuru Paragon. This gets their blocker out of the way, meaning that I can attack and get a counter. I guess I could have attacked anyway, just because they're not going to trade, because they would just be getting a Linvala back. I think I messed that up a little bit. Does this thing do anything next turn? Creatures with 4 power or greater. It does not. Just gonna pass and let my werewolves flip. They had had enough. Their deck seems cool, but not very good against Brutal Cathar, certainly. That's going to be it for Green-White Humans, at least in this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.